Yes. You started at 0. You started at 1. I think that'll be right for you now.
Thank you.
Yep. You put a negative sign, not a minus sign, causes problems. Yep. You put down plus instead of times. Looks awesome. Anybody else? I'm sorry? Not yet. That's why I said 1 time. See? Not added. The dose is not repeated. Not yet. Next, it says, how many days pass before there's less than 1 milliliter? So if you look into your table and you want less than 1 milliliter, if I keep arrowing down, I just want to see when does that happen. And it looks like on the 11th day. So not the first day you put the medicine in, but the 11th day or 10 days later, whichever way you like to talk about it. So 11 days pass before there's less than 1 milliliter. That's right out of my calculator. In the table. Is the medicine ever completely gone? No. What ends up happening is the amount gets reduced every time, just like we talked about with walking towards the wall. But the actual amount never goes away. There's a trace all the time. Now the effective value, like over time, like 20 years later, is it really worth talking about? No. But there's something there all the time based on this formulaic response. So now, in step 5, it says, okay, wait a minute, maybe 1 dose doesn't do enough. So like maybe you've had some kind of bacterial infection, like an ear infection or something like that when you're a little kid, and you take that medicine called amoxicillin or something, Zithromax, one of those things, kind of a penicillin knockoff, and you want to knock this infection. And so what ends up happening is you don't just take 1 dose, you repeat the dose ever so often. And that's when you add back in another dose. So when that happens, this is what we were talking about just a little bit ago in the vocabulary. This is what they call a shifted geometric sequence, where you have a geometric sequence, but then after the end, you add or subtract something. So the major difference here is that I'm going to start, just like I did before, with my U1 being 16. I start off with my dose, whatever it is, amoxicillin, Tylenol, whatever, and it's 16 milliliters. But then after I do that, when I'm adding on stuff, I have my UN equals my UN minus 1, and I'm multiplying by the fact that I've decreased the amount in my body because my kidneys are filtering it out by 25%, just like before. But each day I'm adding in another dose of 16 milliliters. And that's the shift, that adding in of the extra 16 milliliters into your body. That make sense to you guys? At the end, you just add in another dose. Okay, now this, of course, will affect what happens in our table. So now if you go into your calculator, just like we did before, start at 1, go up by 1, auto, and look in your table. So now I'll go back and I'll look at mine. I'm just going to change my formula by 1 small piece. So now when I go into my y equals, at the end of this equation, I'm just going to add on 16. Still starting at 16, all that kind of good stuff. Let's go look in the table and see what happens. Now you notice that my value is increasing in my body as I go down. And long range value means over time, way out there, maybe 6 months later, a month later. What number am I getting really close to? Take a look. 63.88, 91, 93, 95, 96, 97, 98. What do you think I'm getting close to? 64. So eventually, the level of medicine in my body, if I continue to do this, would level out at 64 milliliters. So after many days, the medicine levels out at 64 milliliters. After a long time, the medicine in your body would level out at 64 milliliters. What if we doubled the medicine to 32? So now what the equation would look like would be my U1 would still be 16 that I started with, but my UN equals UN minus one thing. When I did the multiplication of 1 minus 0.25, I'd be adding on 32. What happens to the medicine then? Where does it level off? How much? Thank you. 128. Good job. Levels off at 128 milliliters. What was the difference between the 16 and the 32? Double. What happened to the level off? Double. So if you double the dosage, the amount you level off at also doubles. So the good news is if you understand that, you actually don't even have to perform the entering it in your calculator, all that kind of stuff. You can just know, oh, I double the dosage I'm putting in, I double my level off, which is called the limit. So it's kind of a nice thing to understand because then you can save yourself some trouble. Questions about any of that stuff? There's actually a formulaic way to get this answer without actually even going into your calculator. It works like this. If you take what they call the restock value and you divide that by the percent that was lost, you will find your long-term value, otherwise known as your limit. So your limit, in our particular case, for example, was the 16 milliliters divided by, I was losing 25% each time, each day. And that gave me an end result of 64 milliliters. So your restock value means how much are you putting in each dose. And I was going down by 25% each time, so that's how much I was losing. And if you take those two numbers and you divide them, you find the long-term value, otherwise known as your limit. Questions? Okay. I want you to try the next example.